IR is so interesting. It's so sexy. Wolf of Wall Street. There's so many movies and it's all insider trading, and it all starts with the information that you have before other people have it, which is a real power trip, isn't it, Maura?
No, no, actually, when you run a firm, it's a real liability.
With all that in mind, I'm really curious about the big changes you've seen in IR that maybe surprised you a little bit. What's up?
Investor relations used to be sort of a nice to have, and now it's a must have, right? So it's really moved from being, into being a highly strategic and critical role, right? So over time, as the industry has matured, more and more companies have really come to understand the value of it, right? So they understand that it's about marketing your stock, which really at the end of the day is your most important asset because that's what you use to access growth capital, right? So I think that's a revelation, and people more and more are looking at investor relations as a strategic function and a value driver in that way, right? It's a function that leads to access to capital.
I can't even imagine a publicly traded company that doesn't use an IR firm, but are they still out there?
Pretty much everyone's in IR today, right? So when I started off, I never heard of the field. I read about, I was in investment banking and I was tired of running merger models on Thanksgiving. And I read an ad in the newspaper about this job in investor relations. And I was like, wow, that is everything in investment banking I love and none of the things I hate, right? So helping the clients, helping them position their stories, doing roadshows, getting to know investors, helping them know the story, all that. So for me, it was like it was really the perfect segue. But the field even then wasn't that well known, right? And we didn't have nearly as many public companies as we have today. And as the industry has matured, it has attracted all kinds of competition.
Who is it that you are advising for the most part?
Primarily CFOs and CEOs.
Mhm.
Okay, we work very closely with the CFO and the CEO on all things from investor relations planning so that they have a plan of attack for the year and they understand, what's the value gap, what are we trying to solve for in our communication, the messaging, the communications materials, the Wall Street marketing plan.
What are your top two or three tips to the CEOs when they're reporting?
A few key things, right? So quarterly earnings calls are really a marketing event, right? So it's the one time every quarter you get the full attention of Wall Street analysts who cover you and investors, right? So it's your moment. I think they're a marketing opportunity, and I think the most important thing to do is to get ready, right? So the first thing is take it seriously, get ready, get in the game, get engaged in the process. It's important, right? It's a prime time opportunity. So that's the first thing. It's not an afterthought. It's not something you do from your vacation in Hawaii. We like to work with our clients to craft a story for each quarter. So we start off by saying, okay, let's think about what's going on the street right now. What are the analysts saying about the stock? What do the investors care about? What if we were going to think of three key takeaways for the quarter? What would they be? What do we most want people to know? Tracy, probably how you think about interviews, right? You get ready with your key messages for this audience, knowing what you know about the audience and your specific situation, right? And then you think about, okay, you deliver those messages and you try to deliver them in a way where you're almost writing the analyst headlines, right? So you start with, if I could write the analyst reports and the headlines following this call, what would they say? Right? So a little bit of reverse engineering, in that way, and then making sure that everything that you write and speak about drives home those key points.
There used to be some cowboy CEOs out there who would never listen to, I would think, wouldn't listen to their investor relations person or maybe even their CFO. Do you still work with, I mean, are people more serious now? Are the CEOs a little bit more careful? Are the stakes higher? Or are there still those cowboy CEOs out there that are just say, I'm going to do what I want to do?
Have you ever heard of the term, unemployable, right?
Yeah.
Tracy? There's also some CEOs that are uncoachable,
Mhm.
right? And they want to do it their way, right? And being in the consulting business, part of what you need to do is figure out how far you can go. I mean, our job is to convince people to do things that they might not want to do sometimes, right? And with some people, you can get them to do these things, and other people just want to do it their own way.
Give an example where it just went wrong.
Lyft recently, announced earnings, and their stock was 67% up in aftermarket trading. And the reason it was up is because there was a mistake in the press release, mixing up 500 basis points versus 50 basis points. Okay. That's called investor relations worst nightmare. Okay.
It's a good example.
When the stock actually starts moving like that because of a mistake, right? So some investors were involved in buying stock on untrue news. All right. So that's a great story for investor relations people to tune into, because it could happen to anybody. And when you asked about the tips for how can tips for getting prepared for an earnings call, one of the most important ones is that you need to have a schedule, and you need to stick to that schedule. And there needs to be a time when it's pencils down on the press release, pencils down on the script. Okay, pencils down, because the later it gets, and the more people that are involved and the later it gets, the more mistakes that happen.
And just say real quickly for all of us what Reg FD is.
Regulation fair disclosure has been around for about 20 years now, and it was created to basically it was a law that was passed to create a level playing field so that all investors got the same information at the same time, and that there was no unfair advantage to institutional investors. Okay, because that's how it used to be. The sell side companies used to call the sell side analyst and the institutional, their favorite bank, and say, hey, we're going to announce a deal tomorrow. And then they would get all their clients, goosed up for that, right? So the idea was really to create a level playing field for retail and institutional investors, for everybody. So company and the SEC is pretty serious about Reg FD. There are periodic infractions. There was an AT&T infraction last year. And companies need to be real careful and mindful of disclosing material news, within the
Well, you don't want insider trading, and you would think you'd have to make
Correct.
sure that it's Barron's or Wall Street Journal. I wonder what you thought about this story of this poor woman who was running, it was a bank that she worked in, and she was working from home, and her husband heard about a merger. Then he traded on the information without telling her, and she got divorced, but she's still in a lot of trouble. She lost her job and everything. So that's all
A
right.
lot of bad stuff can happen. Remember, Martha Stewart went to jail, right, Tracy? I mean,
Right.
stuff happens, insider trading, and it's not, and nobody should want insider.
Well, movies are made of this. That's why I always think
Yes.
IR is so interesting. It's so sexy. Wolf of Wall Street. I mean, there's so many movies, and it's all insider trading, and it all starts with the information that you have before other people have it, which is a real power trip, isn't it, Maura?
No, actually, when you run a firm, it's a real liability. And Tracy, that's one of the reasons, I know we've had some good conversations about AI and about using ChatGPT to draft things. And for people in investor relations, we're going to be the last bastion of people to adopt this, right? Because anybody like me is scared to death of, like, oh, please God, let's not have anybody putting non-material, non-public information into ChatGPT, right? So
Right.
it's that, and companies, the SEC is serious on it, and there are big fines and penalties for companies that don't live within the law and the spirit of Reg FD. But the net of it, yes, it's good for companies to be good corporate citizens and to being part of the solution on climate change. We can't wait for the government.
Right. They've got good
So
ideas.
good on the companies to be dedicating time, money, effort to these important causes, right?
Well, we're going to end it there because that is a beautiful way of ending it. That's why we trust them. Thank
Tracy?
you. You were great, Maura. This has really been a good talk. Have a great week.
Yeah. Thanks,
Okay.
Tracy. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.